Hello, I'm Ryan Krebs, a senior at Bucktail Area High School. I have spent the majority of my life living in the Renovo area. And throughout my life in this town, I have seen many beautiful and historical landmarks located here throughout the years. Sadly, only a few remain today. Some have been destroyed by the march of time, while others have been destroyed by simple neglect. Regardless, it is a crying shame to see such important parts of Renovo's history disappear forever and have their importance to this town's history be forgotten. While some landmarks have been able to endure and adapt to changing times, others continue to deteriorate to the point that they are better destroyed than restored. Join me as we journey through time and take a look at buildings and places that shaped Renovo and how some have disappeared and how we may be able to create a better future for those that remain. One of the first landmarks I would like to address is the Rialto Movie Theater. The Rialto was opened by John J. McFadden on April 29, 1918 as an opera house, but was quickly converted into a movie theater with the revolution of motion picture. It was the only movie theater within 30 miles and was very popular in its younger days. When it burned down November 23, 1922, it was reopened almost 2 years later and remained in business for several decades. Then in the early 1980s, the Rialto showed its last movie, The Godfather, and never showed another movie again. And a few years later, the Rialto fell into a state of extreme disrepair, was condemned, and finally destroyed. All that remains of the Rialto today is an empty lot of overgrown grass. Before Bucktail Area High School was constructed in the late 1960s, there was another school located on the corner of 7th Street and Ontario in Renovo. Renovo High School was opened in 1917 and remained Renovo's premier public school for over 40 years. Several of Renovo's most respectable community figures went to this school when they were kids. I sat down with two of them, Charles Barnum and Richard Wyckoff, and talked about their days at the old Renovo High School. What was going to that school like?
Well, that was probably some of the best days of my life. We all got along very well. I'm not saying that the teachers weren't strict, because they were. And they were basically trying to keep us focused on learning our subjects. And I enjoyed it. When I look back on it, I have a lot of fond memories of it.
It was a very interesting place. Yeah, it was old, but it was rock solid. There was the community center in town. People would come to plays. We had assemblies there. I remember Doc Williams brought his country western show, and people came out at night. We had Broadway style plays in the gymnasium. It was really, and basketball was incredible there. So, we've got a lot of guys in town here that play basketball. It was a great old school.
In 1960, the school was renamed Bucktail Area High School and remained that way until the new school was built in 1967. The Renovo High School building was then abandoned, and for half a century it remained empty and decayed into an abysmal state. Eventually, the building was condemned and shortly after, destroyed. Now, only two beautiful archways and a pile of rubble are all that remain of the old Renovo High School. Now we get to what could have been a crowning jewel in Pennsylvania landmarks, but now lies in ruins, slowly being consumed by the march of time. During the late 1800s, Renovo was one of the country's finest railroad towns, and was in the middle of a golden age of prosperity and growth, and a shining example of the American dream. In those days, Renovo was far from the sleepy little town it is today. Trains went through the station at all hours of the day. Renovo's back street was home to many places of business, and the streets were lined with beautiful trees. But the collapse of the railroad industry and the advent of the trucking industry led to the end of Renovo Railroad and the death of the American dream in Renovo. Over the years, several landmarks that once stood for the success of the Renovo Railroad were destroyed, like the Renovo Passenger Station, the Hump Building, and the bridge that led to the Renovo Railroad shops. With a lot of Renovo's most historical landmarks already lost to neglect and disuse, it's hard to find any optimism for the future. However, not all of Renovo's landmarks are gone. Some can still be saved from being forgotten, while others have flourished to changing times. A testament to what Renovo used to stand for still stands tall to this day. Construction of the Tipple Coal Sand Station started in the early 1940s, though its completion was put on hold for the call of World War II. In its heyday, the tipple was used to supply steam engines with coal and sand, and later only sand when diesel locomotives came into popular use. When the railroad industry took a turn for the worse, the Tipple Coal Sand Station was no longer used. For years it remained, standing tall, but without purpose. However, the Tipple Coal Sand Station now stands at the center of Renovo's Heritage Park as a grand reminder of what our town was created for and what it used to be like. Renovo's Hotel Clinton has endured the progress of time since its construction was complete in 1910. However, during its century-long existence, it has changed its purpose, its theme, as well as its name several times. When it was first constructed, it paled in comparison with the extravagant Renovo Hotel. But after the Renovo Hotel went out of business and was torn down, the Hotel Clinton became Renovo's premier hotel. In 1925, the Hotel Clinton became the PRR YMCA Hotel and remained as such until 1982. It then stood empty for 4 years till it was bought out and converted into the Old Kingsley Inn, which lasted for little more than a decade. It was then bought once again and turned into Yesterday's, which it has remained as of 2011, though this may change soon as the hotel is now up for sale yet again. In conclusion, many of Renovo's most historical landmarks have been lost to time and simple neglect, and if this neglect continues, we may lose many more landmarks in the process. I have made this presentation and showed it to you, those most worried by the state of this town, and on the internet, in hopes that my peers will take a look and be awakened to the deteriorating historical value that Renovo is facing. But there is still hope for Renovo, say some of our community figures.
It's optimism for the future. I think that it would probably take one good idea or one good business opportunity that could take and be set up in Renovo. I think that the people would be willing to take it at work at a reasonable wage, and that we would have a workforce that would bring more people into our area. But it would take business that general people could work at.
There are enough optimists around that I don't feel alone. So that's good.
We need optimism in today's world, don't we?
We always need it. But they were always there. Optimism is a way of life.
This town is a part of us, and we must work together in order to keep what is important to this town from fading away and being forgotten.